Hello and welcome to part 4 of the Cammie Candy CreepyPasta series. I want to warn you now that if you've not listened to the first 3, they'll be linked in the description below. And if you have, and you're interested in hearing the next part, well then welcome. Let's get started. I have been sitting on a log in the middle of a graveyard. I have been scribbling down the characters for a while now, but no matter who I draw, Cammie ends up in the picture as well. I would help the groundskeep with his duties, but he told me to lay low, and that is what I intend to do. He looks to be in about his 30s. He's a nice guy, quiet, but nice, and I'm growing increasingly worried about when the next disc will show up. I wonder how many are left to go and who will end up dying next. I was lucky enough not to have personally murdered anyone last time, but I fear that my luck will soon run out. The groundskeep tapped my back with his shovel to grab my attention. I groaned in response as he tends to forget his own strength. That hurt. I groaned as I rubbed my back. The man snorted, handing me a disc. I stared at it before hesitantly inspecting it. Cammie Candy in Gravediggers, written in red letters. I wanted to vomit. It came a lot later this time, which I was grateful for, but I was also horrified. I feared what was to come, wondering if maybe not watching it might end all of this. I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of it before. I opted to do so. Stuffing it in my hoodie pocket, I asked where he found it, to which his reply made me shiver. On one of the gravestones, a cartoonist or something. He had a note about giving it to you, though I'm not sure why you would want it in the first place. Not exactly the smartest thing to ask for while on the run. He cleaned his shovel. The man's name was Louis Chevelle. He's got this slight French accent that startles me when he speaks. He rarely speaks, but when he does, his voice is frighteningly deep. Luis may be scary, but he has a heart of gold, being kind enough to protect me, despite what I had done. He believes in the supernatural, so he believes I have some sort of a demon curse. I doubt that, but at this point, anything is possible. Morning turned to night and we went inside to eat. Luis was silent as usual, while I ate up all the deer stew he made. I felt so full from one bowl of this stuff, finally feeling comfortable enough to go to bed after a nice bath. Of course, things never are easy now, are they? I was shaken awake late that same night. I had been startled as Luis pulled me out of my comfort of my bed to see a tree in the forest. He asked me to shine my light on it. I grumpily obliged. Then I saw it. In the trees, there was an old surgical tool covered in fresh blood. Luis looked determined to remove it, getting a ladder and trying to yank it out, only to find that it was pretty jammed in there. I swallowed hard at the sight before me. Where did the blood come from? How did the saw get all the way up there? And how did it get stuck in the tree like that? Question upon question entered my mind, but no answer seemed to present itself. Luis managed to get it out of the tree and then came down with it. This doesn't look like animal blood, he said as he inspected the saw. Old one too, 1933. Some initials are carved into it too. SC. I tried to think of someone with that name, heart skipping a beat when I thought of Salem Crow Circle. No way, I thought to myself, he isn't even real. How would he ever do something like this? But deep down, I knew that it was a threat, a warning so I would watch the DVD. I waited for Luis to leave the house again before I watched the episode. The beginning music had now become an upbeat earworm. Cammie was tearful, as she stared at a small picture in her gloved hands beside the title card, Cammie Candy in Gravediggers. The camera zoomed into the picture in her hands to reveal a picture of the friend group that now had one member left alive. Salem was polishing some tools in a seat nearby as she wept. He did not look her way, though he handed her a handkerchief to wipe away her facial fluids with. She daintily accepted the embroidered cloth and used it to dab away her stray tears. "I wish I had done more to protect them," she sniffled, as Salem removed his mask, then set it on the coffee table. "There was nothing you could have done." He spoke in a soothingly deep voice. His face had large sections in which it was broken beyond repair, though it was still clear that his face was a crystal ball of sorts. He brought himself closer, then rubbed her back in a comforting manner. I jumped as a thunderstorm crashed outside of the small house by the graveyard. I looked up to hear the downpour of rain, which never came. I stared at the front door for a moment, expecting Luis to walk through, but then returned to my show when he did not arrive. Cammie was chatting with Salem. I eventually figured out that they were talking about what to do. "I can't stay here forever. It'd be putting you in danger," she croaked as she looked to Salem. Salem pondered the ordeal for a moment before stating, "I would not be in danger, though I agree that it would not be smart for you to stay in one place for too long." Cammie frowned. "What should I do then?" she asked him while tapping a pencil against the table to a rhythm. Salem seemed to get agitated by that, so he took her hands into his, looking into her eyes. "Cammie, you are going to have to run for your entire life. You will have to fight and kill in order to keep yourself safe." Cammie stared at him silently, to which Salem continued, "Cammie, you have a sweet and tender heart in your chest, but you will need to learn to either harden it or find happiness in the actions you commit." Cammie jumped out of her chair, pulling her hands out of his own. "Absolutely not!" she yelled. "I could never do that! There has to be another way!" Salem stared at her for a bit longer before shaking his head. "I apologize, Cammie, but that is the way things are. The world is not made to be kind. It was made with cruelty in mind." Cammie looked at Salem's stern expression. "What do you mean by that?" she sniffled. "I mean that life is not all about happy endings. It's about survival," Salem said matter-of-factly. I stared at the screen. This cartoon suddenly had gotten a lot more adult than I had expected as I laid in the darkness of my room. Cammie stared at the camera now, tears forming in her eyes before she started to cry once again. The poor woman had to make a very unfair decision, and I couldn't blame her. Salem sighed, taking her under his arm, then pulling her into a hug. It made my sad heart warm up. Salem may be a quiet character, but he is a good character as far as I was concerned. Cammie hugged him back, sobbing until the camera cut to Cammie, sitting on her bed while staring at an image of Edgar. Salem entered with something wrapped in cloth. "I have a gift for you, Miss Candy," Salem said as he placed the object upon her lap. Cammie was confused but unwrapped the instrument. She was startled by it once it was revealed. "Are you crazy?" she yelped. Salem calmly shook his head, no, in response. She shakily held up a... I panicked, then stole a glance at the bone saw we had pulled out of the tree, then the one in Cammie's hands. She stared at it with the same amount of fear I had, but for separate reasons. "Salem, I can't accept this," she began to say, only for Salem to shoo it away. "Nonsense. It is to ensure your safety. as well as to serve as a tool for your survival. Take it. I have a new one anyway, so this should serve you very well. Cammie stared at the blade. It has your initials on it. What if I get caught and they blame you for my crimes? You know how the town views you. Salem chuckled. Miss Candy, you need not worry for me. Even if it is discovered that I helped you, it is my decision to make, so don't concern yourself with the details. That's my job. Cammie stares at him, then back at the blade, with a shocked and sad look. But, she started, but was silenced by Salem's finger, resting itself on her lips. It's not your concern, Cammie. It will be okay. Worry about you before you even pay me any mind. Cammie relaxed, tearfully accepting the weapon. Salem gave an encouraging smile. So long as you're safe, I'll be happy. Even if 1,000 people die, your safety is my priority. You have a kind soul, and that is worth more than its weight in blood. Cammie was startled by that, but hugged him. Thank you, Salem. You've been a true friend. It zoomed out on them hugging, then cut to Cammie getting packed up for her new way of life. Salem had gotten her ready and gave her one of his coats to wear, though it was large on her, but it was cute. Cammie gave him a smile, then they parted ways. Cammie left the home in the graveyard, then began her journey. She sang a song as she walked through the forest, a cutesy song about new beginnings. She shimmied and danced along with each note that left her mouth, tapping her feet as she continued on. My heart felt warm again, while I felt my mouth melt into a small smile. Maybe this episode wouldn't be so bad. She continued through the forest, whistling a softer version of the travel song, when she jumped up with fright at a loud sound. I jumped as well. The sound had blasted through the speakers of the portable DVD player. She looked around with a start, eyes filled with terror, as she hesitantly stepped forward. That was when she screamed as 4 characters dug themselves out of the ground. They all appeared to be some zombies, as they told her to hand over her belongings or they'd do whatever they pleased with her. Cammie hesitated, seeming to be fighting with herself as she backed away from the first 3, only to bump into the 4th. She gasped as she was pulled back. The other toons took her belongings, dumping them on the ground. The one holding her began to flirt, which sent alarms off in my head as Cammie struggled to get out. She closed her eyes as a thought bubble appeared with Salem and Edgar in it. They encouraged her to get them, cheering her on to go take care of them. She stayed quiet for a bit longer before cheerfully giggling, which unnerved the assailants. She grinned big before digging her teeth into the man holding her arm. He screamed and his friends came to his rescue. One pulled out a switchblade, then went to stab her, to which she retaliated by pulling his friend in the way of the blade. Once it made contact, her teeth released his arm. Then she lunged for him as well. Teeth sank into throat. Then the dying man was thrown towards the third one. She got a hold of the bone saw, then giddily giggled while stamping her feet as if she was having the time of her life. She looked the last standing man in the eyes before she took a step forward. Then she lifted the saw, showing minor hesitation before rushing towards him, then beginning to slash at him. I had to turn down the volume as his screams were so loud that they hurt my ears. I realized I was grinning, my chest moving without me. I was chuckling to myself. I smacked myself in the cheek to regain control of myself, but the grin wouldn't leave. I realized the time was coming and started packing up. Luis came back to check on me. I was starting to feel the effects get stronger. I took the saw with me and he tried to ask me questions. I felt something overtake me. 1 second I was smiling at him. Then I kissed him, while staring into his confused and startled face, as if I was a cartoon. The rest was a blur. He called my name, a cold chill and a weight, laughter and screaming, a splash of warmth. Then I was in the forest, snow falling, and falling hard. I felt blood on my hands. I looked back to see I had left a red trail and was dragging ahead by the hair. It was severed, my run more like a march, and the blood soaking into my clothes. I realized I had not watched the rest of the episode, so I opted to continue on and find a place to rest for the night. It was a few hours, but I was energized. I managed to find an area in the forest to set up camp. It was only when I sat down by the fire I realized the severity of what I had done. I cried a little at first, but then I wiped away the minimal tears before opting to finish the episode. I pressed rewind and played the video with my shaky hands. I wrapped myself in a blanket, setting the severed head to my side. I wiped off the blood-splattered screen with my sleeve, only to realize I was smearing it, then got the baby wipes from my bag. I cleared it off to see Cammie's back facing the camera before she bent backwards at an unnatural angle to look directly at the viewers. She smiled mischievously, winking before she stood back up and strutted off, holding 4 heads and her bone saw, her bag on her back as the title card came into view. It was the 4 heads tied by the hair and hanging off the tree branch, makeup all over their faces with goofy designs. The end theme is just so familiar now that I can hum the tune from memory alone. I am losing my mind slowly but surely. I know that, but instead of fighting it, I have opted to embrace it. Sometimes, when something upsets you, you bury it deep. Sometimes, you are met with an ultimatum: kill or be killed. And sometimes, just sometimes, embracing your weakness can turn them into your greatest strengths. I may be losing my mind, but I don't think I care anymore. I'm happy the way I am, and I cannot wait for the final episode.